In this video, we will be demonstrating how to make repairs to a leather steering wheel using the Leather Magic Leather Steering Wheel Repair Kit. This particular steering wheel has been removed from the vehicle. However, it's not necessary to remove the wheel to perform any type of repair. Having the steering wheel removed from the vehicle does sometimes make the job a little bit easier, but it can make it more difficult as well. This particular steering wheel does not have a lot of severe damage to it. There's a great deal of finish damage where the finish is slightly cracking and peeling. That's where this basic kit excels. There are also a few areas which will require some repair with filling material. This video will demonstrate how to use the optional repair material for filling and repairing this type of damage as well. Also, keep in mind that this kit may also be used to make repairs to damaged shift knobs and other small trim pieces on the inside of the vehicle. The very first step in the process is to thoroughly clean the entire steering wheel. We will do this using the Leather Magic leather cleaner that is provided in the kit. Using a soft cloth or paper towel, spray a generous amount of the leather cleaner directly onto the towel. Scrub over the area extremely well. Keep the cloth well saturated with cleaner as you proceed over the area. It may be necessary to use a new cloth or towel as you continue cleaning. We now want to begin masking of the surrounding area. You'll want to use a high quality tape to go right along the edge of the spokes where the leather meets the vinyl parts. Make sure you don't get any of the tape onto the leather areas, which we do want to have colored. Use your fingernail or a thin object to push the edges of the tape down so that they seal the protected areas. Continue doing each individual spoke until they're all completed, and then focus your attention on the hub area and other areas that may need protection as well. Now that our masking is complete, it's now time to move on to the actual preparation of the leather surface. The next two steps are the most important aspects of the entire process, so that we achieve a permanent, like-new replication of the original. To start the prep work, we will use the leather prep to vigorously scrub the leather. The leather prep does so much more than just a cleaner by itself. It will remove any foreign matter still remaining, but more importantly, it will etch the surface of the leather by slightly breaking down the original finish, open the pores of the leather, allowing it to become more absorbent, so that the new color coat material will become more deeply embedded into the leather. Use a very generous amount of the leather prep and thoroughly soak the towel. Scrub the leather vigorously, heavily wetting the surface, and allow the chemical to do its work. As you scrub over the area, you will notice that some of the original color is being removed. This is exactly what we want to have happen. The color that you see coming off of the wheel is actually dead material that will no longer remain on the leather and would eventually be rubbed away, leaving the steering wheel looking even worse. It's also a good idea to use several different cleaning towels. One will get loaded up with the old finish that you're removing, and you don't want to just spread that around on the wheel. So periodically, change to a new towel and continue on with the process. Continue scrubbing the entire rim of the wheel until you have gone completely around it, and then closely examine the wheel to make certain that you have washed everything down with the leather prep. Once you've completed washing the steering wheel down, allow it to sit for 5 to 10 minutes and completely dry before moving on to the next step. Okay, now that the leather prep has completely dried, We're going to use a special sandpaper to sand the surface of this. This sandpaper is a coated sandpaper. This happens to be a 220 grit sandpaper, but the coated sandpaper is especially effective on leather. It does not cut like wood sandpaper would, because what we want to do is only scuff the surface. We don't want to turn our leather into suede. We don't want to remove that finish that's on there, but we do need to scuff it and break it so that the new finish will be deeply absorbed into the leather. You can use a finer grit coated sandpaper. You can even use like a 600 grit wet or dry sandpaper, but the 220 grit coated sandpaper is faster, more efficient. So to start, we're going to start with inside the spoke and just kind of lightly scuff that area, and then come down the rim of the wheel, and again we want to just lightly scuff it. Where you want to put a great deal of emphasis is inside on the stitching. You don't want to get into that stitching with the sandpaper. So basically just take the edge of the sandpaper and go right along the stitching. Don't get onto it to sand into the threads. And you'll want to do that on both sides all the way around the wheel. And just put the edge right up against the stitching without touching them, and then just sand right in those areas. And that's all we really need. It's just a light scuffing. We're not trying to remove the finish. So we'll do that all the way around the wheel. Work our way around. You can kind of bend the sandpaper around the rim with your fingers. Flip the wheel over. Work the other side. Again, be careful of the stitching on the inside. You'll always have the little grooves, finger grooves in the wheel, so you want to be careful to get down in between those. And to save a little bit of time on the video, I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm going to do this same process all the way around the wheel. Okay, the sanding is all complete on this wheel. As you can see, we have not removed a great deal of the existing finish. We've scuffed it. That sanding action will remove any loose, flaky material that may be coming off. It will open this existing finish so that when we apply the new color coat, it will be more deeply absorbed into the leather, making it a very, very permanent job. Steering wheels get a tremendous amount of abuse, and your hands are on them constantly, rubbing. Body oils, hand sanitizers, lotions, all kinds of things will affect that leather. And so we want that finish to be just like brand new. And that's what this is going to give us. One final step before we move on to the refinishing part. We want to get rid of this sanding dust. We also want to make sure that there's no oils from our hands that may have transferred onto the surface of this leather, which could interfere with the adhesion of the color coat. So again, we're going to go back with the leather prep and just a light wiping down. That will remove any of the sanding dust, and it will also remove any body oils that were left behind by our hands. To do this, basically you're going to take my cloth, and I'm just going to put a rather light amount of leather prep on it. And I just want to go around the rim of this wheel and wipe it down. And as you'll see, I'm getting a lot of sanding dust and a lot of the color off of it, which is exactly what I need to do. Flip my rag over, we'll put just a tad bit more leather prep to it. And again, we want our leather to be completely dry before we move on to the next step. So I'm going to let this sit for about 5, maybe 10 minutes. Let that leather prep absorb or evaporate, and let this leather dry out, and then we'll proceed to the next step. Okay, our leather prep is good and dry, and I want to use now a microfiber towel, and we want to wipe over the area to remove any dust, any lint, any foreign matter that may be on there that would cause us some issues. Microfiber towel works really well for this, leaves no residue. Now, as we discussed earlier in the video, I also want to demonstrate the actual repair of leather once it's been damaged. So this particular wheel does not have a great deal of damage to it, but there is some areas that have some cracks that are forming that I feel could be an issue later on down the road. Some of the other areas that I thought may need to be repaired have been taken care of by the sanding action, but this area right here is really going to be difficult to see on the video, but there are some really tiny hairline cracks forming, and we're going to fill those and repair them. Now, as I mentioned, there is an optional product component that you can order with the kit. It's the leather repair compound. Most steering wheels don't need to be repaired, but every once in a while you run across one that does. So we're going to use the leather repair compound. This is a paste, and it's a rather thin paste, so it's really easy to work with. On a steering wheel, because it's a rounded area, using a palette knife or a spreading tool is a little difficult. The material does not spread evenly. Using your finger works the best. And I'll just take a small amount of the repair material, find my areas, and put it on there, and I'm going to spread it very thin right over those areas. And it spreads easy. I want to work that material down into those little hairline cracks. I want to have no ridges where I spread it, so I want it spread very smooth. And that's pretty much all there is to it. We'll now let that dry. That again will take about 10 to 15 minutes to dry. You can speed up the drying time with a hair dryer. And that's completely up to you as to which way you'd like to go. So let's stop the video to save time, and when this is dry, we'll come back to it. Okay, now that our repair compound is dry, we're going to want to use the sandpaper once again and lightly sand this area. This will remove those stroke marks from spreading it with our finger. It will smooth everything out, and we'll leave enough of the repair material in that area to fill in those little cracks and gouge marks. won't take a great deal of sanding. We just want to smooth it out. And that's it. Now, again, we're going to want to use the microfiber towel. And let's just wipe off any sanding dust. Check the area, make sure that we've got all of the ridges down. There's one little spot over here that needs to come down a little bit more. And I think that's it. Now, last step. We want to move on to the refinishing of the leather. We're going to use the color coat. This is a black steering wheel. It's just a standard color. But when you order the kit, you can order it in any color that you need for your particular vehicle. You can check out all of the colors on our color charts and find the one that matches your steering wheel, and that's what you will receive in the kit when you put that information in. You've got to enter the color ID number. Now we're going to use the applicator sponge. This is a little foam sponge, and the color coat, you want to shake it very vigorously. There's a lot of pigment in this, and so we need to shake it up quite well. Get all of those pigments worked out. I'm going to pour a small amount right onto the sponge. And then we're going to work it into the steering wheel. Just wipe it on. Very light, thin coats, making sure that we get everything covered. This is where the box comes in nice when you're working on a steering wheel that's out of the car. You don't need the box when you're working on a steering wheel in the car. It's actually considerably easier to do this with the steering wheel in the car. But we just wipe this color coat on, and we leave it very thin. We don't want to put it on thick and heavy. We want it very thin and very light. Continuously move the steering wheel so you can get to pieces of it. This is why it's important to mask along the spokes, because you don't want to get that color coat onto areas of the steering wheel that it's not supposed to be. You'll also notice this is drying almost immediately, so keeping it very light and thin makes the job go much faster. You want to make sure to catch any areas where you may have a buildup. Okay, we've been once around the steering wheel, and by the time we get to where we started, it's generally dry enough to where you can continue adding the color coat. If it's not, you're going to want to make sure that everything is dry before you move on to the second coat. So let's give this a minute or so, and we'll come back to it. Once the first coat has completely dried, you may begin applying a second coat. The second coat, and every subsequent coat that may follow, will be applied in exactly the same manner as demonstrated on the first coat. Generally, 3 coats will be required in order to get a perfect uniform finish. However, on rare occasions, additional coats may be required. Once completely dry and completed to your satisfaction, the unit may be placed back into service. However, due to the newness of the finish, it will be rather tender and susceptible to damage during the first 12 to 24 hours. The final step in the restoration is the application of leather conditioner. As mentioned earlier, the conditioner would be applied 12 to 14 hours after the color coat has been applied. Using a soft cloth, pour a small amount of the leather conditioner onto the cloth and gently wipe it over the surface of the wheel. Leather conditioner will produce a soft and natural feel to the leather and will also act as a sort of hardener for the color coat. As you apply the leather conditioner, you may see some color come off of the wheel onto the towel. This is normal and should not be of any concern, as this is simply dried residue and has no harming effect to the finish. Use a soft microfiber towel to buff off any excess conditioner and allow the wheel to dry. You now have a steering wheel that looks and functions just like a new one.